I don't think I knew that your mom died from suicide.
Really?
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
I mean, you always put a picture out there on her
Put them
birthday and her
right.
anniversary, her death
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Your sister always put stuff out there, but I don't think I ever knew that. So how do you think? I mean, obviously, like I knew that she died at an
Right.
early age, but how do you think that impacted?
Man, I think it, one, at that point, I feel I didn't really have a childhood,
Okay.
because the last conversation I remember having with my mom was that, always take care of your sister, who was 3 years younger than me. So at that point, my mind transitioned to always looking out for her.
Yeah.
So I grew up real fast. So I didn't have a childhood. Like a lot of people start talking about childhood memories. I don't know if I have a mental block because of what happened, but I really can't dig into that vault to talk about childhood memories. Then one of the other things is emotionally, I stopped feeling, because feelings to me started being associated with being hurt.
Welcome to another episode of the BRSTEM podcast. Our children need roots and wings. For this episode, we got a very special guest, one of my brothers. I'm not gonna use that phrase from another mother, but a good brother that I've been known for some time. So we're gonna get into some conversations around youth development, around family, around economic development, and there's a lot of different things that are going on in the city of Baton Rouge right now. So I want to welcome Mr. Isaiah Marshall, and if you would just go ahead and share a little bit more about yourself and about your background.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having on, Eric. As always, man, when we get together, it's always good to be able to have some conversations as it relates to moving things forward. So, just from my background, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I've owned some type of business since I was about 19 years old. As it relates to, also, I always like to point out that I'm from New Orleans, so I also come from the streets. I have some of that in my background as well, and so just real versed in a lot of ways. Also have a lot of history. I'm a former government executive. That's actually where our paths kind of
Yeah.
cross. During that time, actually, I got into this. I was appointed by 3 administrations, actually. The first one was under Mayor Tomac McHugh, where I became the assistant director for Can And actually, what that was, in that position, I used to work with civic associations, business owners, community leaders, helping them to understand how to navigate government. Also worked in being able to give beautification grants and things of that nature, neighborhood associations,
Okay.
and how to set policies, really to pretty much how you beautify your neighborhood. Then I actually moved from that position under Mayor Bobby Simpson. I became the assistant workforce investment board director.
All right.
Under that stint, that's when I really got immersed into economic development, workforce development, and things of that nature. And funny story behind that, actually, I went to Bobby Simpson pitching him on allowing, I had a business idea to create a training program for young people.
Okay.
And he's like, you know what? I got one better for you. One, I got a position that he actually created, because prior to me, there was no assistant workforce
Okay.
investment board director. So that position was actually created for me with the hopes of, the person who was before me would retire at some point. Did that for a good while. Actually, I was also the program manager for the Small Emerging Business Development Program, and that's kind of where we
Yeah.
started
Yeah.
working together with that program. From there, under Mayor Holden, which was my last appointee, I became the program administrator, which people know now as employer BR.
Okay, gotcha.
Did that for a little while. Then actually I'd reached the highest place I could be in government. The next spot, it was either like a CEO or something like that because I tapped out financially in steps. That's how the city parish works. So I was like, really, I can't make no more money. I still can do some good things of that nature. Then there was an opportunity to actually run for the Metro Council. People kind of started talking to me about it. I said, okay, let me go ahead and take a shot at that. I think it was 11 or 12 of us in that race. I end up coming in third. I was about 300 votes out of the runoff. Then I had a decision to make: either go back to city parish government or do consulting thing full time. So I decided to do the consulting thing full time. Then we linked up again because then during that time is when
Good times, man.
good times, man. People just don't, man, good times. We're the forefront runners on a lot of stuff that's happening in the city right now. That
we're gonna talk about that.
We're gonna
talk about that.
And so during that time, MLB Consulting Group that I've always had, and actually EBR school system at the time had put out the bid, I think, for the Fair Share program.
Yep.
And it was you, myself, Anita, and James who came together to go after that opportunity. We had some good synergy. From there, we formed actually Sable International. And I forget, but people oftentimes remind me, we were the first consulting firm. Let me clarify that. The first Black consulting firm that was actually on the front of Business.
Say that one more time.
We were the first Black consulting firm that was on the front page of the Business.
Yep.
And so, and then, from there, it became just two of us. We did a lot of ed reform type things, still workforce development. Then, rolled into, you kind of took on the ed the reform kind of thing. You had that opportunity. So I had Sable solo for a good little bit there, and then kind of morphed into doing my MLB consulting group, still around workforce development. And just fast forward, end up getting diagnosed with prostate cancer. This is going into year 2, and I launched the foundation, Isaiah Motion.
Okay.
That's where we kind of sit today.
All right. So we're going to break down, I'm going to go back and break down some of them pieces for this conversation. I think I want to go back to the beginning because obviously we didn't know each other back then, but talk a little bit more about what it was like growing up in the city of New Orleans.
Yeah, man. It was, it was fun for me. It was fun for me. Things changed for me when I was about 12.
Okay.
And the turning point was my mom committed suicide when I was 12 years old. So I had a private school education, came up in Catholic schools from kindergarten to 8th grade. That kind of changed, and I always talked a lot about emotional intelligence. At that point, I think my emotional intelligence kind of ceased and also declined a little bit.
Okay.
Then from there, I stayed with my grandmother, who till I was about 15, and then she passed. So in a short period of time, 2 women who I held the most dear to me in life had passed, and so it really created a hard heart for me, where I said, "Man, I never loved anybody like that again." So from there, I went to stay with my dad. So probably from about 14, 15, I kind of started, doing my own thing, getting the streets. I still was in school, but I wouldn't listen to nobody. Nobody could tell me anything. So that's when I, from the age of about 15 to 21, I was kind of hardcore. And that, to me, I was cool with being that lifestyle.
Why you think that was?
I think I wasn't. I tell people a lot of times I wasn't suicidal, but I was definitely homicidal. What I mean by that is I didn't mind putting myself in harm's way, and so in New Orleans during the time I was raised, it was the murder capital, and it was either you're gonna be predator or prey, and I was not about to be the prey, so I chose to be amongst the predators.
So let me ask you this, man. See, I want to ask this. And we talk about this. And so when you look at, how do I ask this? So there were situations in Baton Rouge growing up. I mean, I didn't necessarily have, same type of circumstances or whatever. And I appreciate you sharing that. But there were still situations growing up in Baton Rouge. And, some people that are our age now, you've kind of heard their story. And I want to say, well, one of them was Silk and Slim.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know the young man. I didn't know him growing up. But the neighborhood right over was Zion City.
Okay.
And so, it was just a lot of stories I would hear about Zion City Smurfs. I didn't necessarily know who they were, who any particular people were. So it's not that I know people from New Orleans call Baton Rouge the country.
Yeah.
But it
was some situations. Yeah.
It was some situations going on. Right?
Hood is hood.
And so, and I know, young people might say, oh, that's what they always say, but it's just different now, right? Baton Rouge is different than it was then.
It is. Yeah.
And so having worked in government, I don't want to try to skip ahead, but what I'm trying to understand is when you come across young people, and we've talked about this before, who live in a certain life, like, do you feel like you connect with them? You think, like, it's just different? Are you able to relate to like some of the root causes?
Yeah, it is a little different, man, because I can remember even when I was going through, because what I didn't say, I was, I think it was either my sophomore or my freshman year, I got kicked out of high school where I was expelled. I was going to school in Jefferson Parish. And when I got expelled, so they let me, I had a situation, they let me back in. The same day they let me back in, an old situation popped up and I got expelled. It was just, nah. And so I got expelled to the point where I couldn't go to school in the parish. How people go, I couldn't, there was no alternatives, none of that. No, you can't come to school in the parish. So I was out for a good little bit, which how I ended up going to school in Orleans Parish and graduating from Bullshit because I had family there. So I said that to say this. During a little stint of that, my uncles on my mom's brothers had a construction company. So I would have to go, and I was made to go work construction during those times when I was out of school, when I'm wilding. And a lot of the people, because my uncle had did a little time in Angola, did like 5 years. And so a lot of people he would hire would be people who were re-entering to society. And they would talk to me. And this what got me kind of my mind turning a different way. And they will probably be 30, 40, maybe some of them 50. And it was like, young blood, what you doing out there? Telling my situation. It's like, look, you don't want to be like us. Figure out how to use your mind and not your back. Because the way you going, you're going to be dead or in jail. And if you go to jail and survive it, you're going to end up doing a lot of time and you're going to be out there in this concrete for the rest of your life or even worse. The light bulb went off on my head. So I was still open to listen. A lot of times you catch some of the young kids that's willing to listen, but a lot of them on drugs.
Okay.
Got it. So, and it's influence. And a lot of people say, "Oh, it's the music." Well, when we was coming up, we had music that was, right. You see what I'm saying? We had music, and looking right there. That's who I listened to at any time when I was ready to be where I needed to be. So it's more than just the music. I also say, I take some accountability. I don't know if it was our generation or the generation before us or after us, we let go the rope.
Yeah.
And because we let go of the rope, now it's hard to put our arms back around them. So I take a little blame on that because I don't think we was on it like we should have been on it because we got so caught up. Even though
talk more about that.
Yeah, I think we got so caught up in our, providing for our families, things of that nature. And even though we were doing certain programmings and things of that nature, we didn't get in the trenches like we had men who would get in the trenches with us. So I think a lot of that comes from that as well.
Yeah, and that's why I want you to expound on it because I think that is a part of the deal. Because people talk about how, the whole respect factor and things like that. And I just think for too long, this is my opinion. I just feel like for too long, we let certain things ride with
Yep.
young people.
Yep.
And so I think that's part of where the respect factor has kind of disintegrated. And so it's funny because sometimes I'll be in conversations, be in situations with young men, and it's just a simple example, like, bro, who you talking to?
Right.
But I think the thing is, like, they've gotten so accustomed
Yeah.
to being on the same level with adults.
Yeah.
When people don't rock like that, it's just a shock factor.
Yep. Yep. I was just at church, not this Sunday, the past Sunday. It was two little young guys, probably, let's say 12 and 13. And initially I wasn't paying attention, but they was cutting up with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ladies at church that came and made them go do something to kind of separate them. So they come back to the seats, and it was the second time, and I saw her getting at him again to about to bring him. I told her, I said, I got him. I said, y'all come here. I said, what's the problem? So apparently they was talking about each other, and I said, and I was just firm with him. I said, look, we ain't doing that. That stops right now. I ain't trying to hear it. I don't care who started. For the rest of the service, y'all sit there and don't say nothing. Just pay attention to what's going on. And they did that.
Yeah.
A lot of times it have to be firm, but oftentimes too, then you have the element where people don't want you to talk to their children.
Yeah.
And they want to jump on you for talking to their children. So you got to be careful. And one side of the mouth to say, please help. Then the next side of the mouth is like, don't talk to my children. So it's like, it's some parents don't help out with the situation. So,
all right. Yeah. So then, talk to me about like when you first got to Baton Rouge, what it was like.
I'm gonna tell you the statement. I'm just gonna be transparent. So Tina, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she's a native of Baton Rouge, and moving around in Baton Rouge a little bit. Then I finally this is a statement I made to her. I said, Baton Rouge is a plantation. She's like, huh? She was a little offended. I said, she said, what you mean by that? I said, it seems like everybody have to go and get permission before they do anything. And I don't understand that. I don't get that. Why everybody gotta go get permission from the powers to be to make a move. And so that was my first kind of thought about it. And quite honestly, it didn't change for quite some times. And it seems like here's what I was accustomed to. My family had business. And a lot of the opportunities came from, and I didn't realize it then, but I realized it, as I got older, as my grandmother, my mom's mom, was politically connected.
Okay.
And I didn't realize it, like I said, until now, because as little kids, I can remember when it was campaign season, she would have us with push cards. I didn't know what a push card was. I just know when it was election time, we had to be out there giving them cards out to people. And as I started talking to my family, my grandmother was the go-to who people would go to as it relates to getting the black vote out, right? And as a result of that, my family got a lot of opportunities. So I came up seeing business on that side of the family. And so in New Orleans, one of my uncles was real cool with Mark Morier.
Okay.
So, and I was accustomed to black business owners having real opportunities. I mean, real opportunities in New Orleans. So when I come from that environment, and then I was also accustomed to, remember I said I come from the street, so I'm accustomed to people hustling.
Yeah.
So I didn't seen it illegal, and I didn't saw it legally. So now when I come here, it's like I'm trying to find that space, and it's like, so that was kind of a little difficult for me transitioning.
And I think that's part of what, I'm gonna come from a slightly different perspective, but I think that's part of what, like that frustration, I think is what allowed us to connect. And so I kind of grew up, obviously, like I said, like in a different situation, but we was always raised, which it seemed like you was too. We was always raised, speak up, hold your head up,
Yep.
look a person directly in the
Yep.
eye,
Yep.
and like I watch my dad and my mom, like they go in any type of room with any kind of people and be able to function and and move in them circles.
Yep.
And it wasn't even necessarily about business or politics. It's just in the community or whatever the case may
Yep.
be. School. My parents always walked into certain rooms, and like they can work the room or whatever.
Yep.
And so, having moved away from here, after finishing school and stuff, and living in the city was the exact same shit. So, moving to Dallas and seeing Black people running businesses, and when I, working for Texas Instrument, but I was always wanting to start a business. And so when I started getting that inkling and, just started researching and stuff, and this was like during, websites were coming alive then. And so I'm going and I'm talking to folks and finding Black-owned art stores, the Black-owned newspaper, which is humongous in Dallas, different churches and whatnot. It was just like, this is how we're supposed to be.
Right.
So then when the opportunity came to move back here, it was like, what is going on with this place?
Yeah.
And I'll just tell you one quick example. And it's no knock against him because I know you had a good appreciation for him. But to me, it was just like the mindset of the city. And so one of the things when I first moved back here that just floored me, right? I was like, when they closed that, because when in high school, after the basketball games, we used to go to the Plank Road McDonald's.
Okay.
At the best French fries, as far as we knew.
Okay.
Best French fries in Baton Rouge.
Okay.
And so I moved back here, and I promise you, it was in a year moving back here that closed it and was remodeling it. And when Bobby Simpson got on the news and said that was an example of economic development for Baton Rouge, and that was like 20 years ago, man. I was like, oh my God, what are we doing?
What are we doing? Yeah.
And I'm coming from Dallas where in a community similar to the South or Eden Park, I mean, it wasn't like in South Dallas, people was begging for grocery stores.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's where we've been at in Baton Rouge for at least 20 years.
Yeah.
Like we need grocery stores in our communities.
And
so I think that's why we connected, because I just believe, even back then and still to this day, I believe this city can be so much greater than it is. So much greater than it is. And so I think one of the challenges, again, going back to, our focus with the podcast, is our young people.
Yeah.
And so I'll say back then, because it seemed like we was having the same fight right now. And back then, the challenge was, how do we keep our young people in the city?
Yeah.
And so as the city has grown, now we got like this dual dichotomy where we got to track, even starting in school, we got to track the kids that's going one way, and the track the kids that we're trying to figure out what to do with them. Yeah. And the track of kids that's going one way, like it's just like, what's the next city I can get to?
Yeah.
And we don't seem to have a plan for the kids that's going in another direction.
Yeah.
And so how do we turn that around? Because again, I genuinely believe in this city, and I believe we got a lot of potential. And it seemed like, we slowly but surely becoming the old heads around here. But I still had that same energy about the city.
Yeah. I think it all boils down to, it's always been, right now, the fight is about economic independence. I've always felt that, that was the move, at the end of the day, how do we make sure young people can see the money? And if they, because oftentimes, especially in an age in where they're living in with social media and this instant gratification, what most times going to grab their attention is something tangible that they can feel in their pocket. And how do you get that to them? Because most are caught up in wanting to be street. And when it all boils to, when we talking about going the other way, we don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
It's street. That's what they think they want to be. I got some of them, they think they want to be that until you really run into that. That's not what it is. And it's understanding, it all, the Bible tells us it says, train up a child in a way that they should go. So what that tells me is they each have a gift. I think what has happened is we try to create systems and try to fit these kids inside of these
Yeah.
different systems instead of trying to figure out what talent that each of these kids have, do they have, and try to figure out how to bring that out of 'em. Now that's gonna be, take a little bit more work and things of that nature. But if we just sit down with a kid and say, "Hey, what are you interested in?" And then figure out how do we plug them into what they're interested in, but also have some dollars attached to that. Um, and like we did some with the entrepreneur thing, with the W Institute. There was a bunch of kids, who had ideas, but at the end of the day, we was able to give them some money to actually help to move forward. So I'm always trying to figure out how do we attach some dollars to educate these kids. Because when it all boils down to it, because sometimes, we don't know what's going on at the house.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm gonna go back to what you were saying about sitting down with the kids and understanding where their interests are. There was two things actually came to mind. So the first, again, going back to Dallas, where and like we've talked about this in Baton Rouge. We've had these benchmark visits to these
Yeah.
other cities, talked about the creative class and things like that. Um, so like I feel like we talk about that type of stuff, but again, to your point, it's still like these pipelines that we create.
Yep.
So Baton Rouge has a certain economy, and it's no knock on any industry, whatever. But I mean, that's the reality. We got a certain economy industries that's driving the economy around, here, and we put a lot of energy into feeding those.
Yep.
Um, and it just I'll be honest with it, it irks me at times because you'll hear conversations like everybody not meant to go to college, and then we should get a trade, but then I feel like you're still putting a cap on the kid.
Right.
And so what I've always said is if you push a kid towards college and then he decide that or she decide they want to
That's
go a
different.
different route,
Yeah.
like that's a decision they've made.
They may.
But like they have some assets where they can make those decisions and make
Right.
those choices versus pushing them one way and then they got to rethink things when it
Yep.
don't work out for them.
Yep.
Or that's not what they're interested in.
Yep.
So that was the one thing. But the other thing that made me think about this, again, going back to this creative economy type conversations, and I never could figure this out. And the people might say like, well, that's not what we should be aspiring to. But I can think of one, two, three, at least three, and I'm talking in the arts. We've had at least three like world-renowned hip hop artists
Mm.
that were based here in Baton Rouge,
Yep.
and at least one of them
Yep.
had started a whole studio and things,
Yep.
and yeah, and so I wasn't here doing Master P's time. Yeah. I wasn't living here. Um, and when I was running the school, I saw NBA YoungBoy coming up, whatnot. And then we all know about Boots. And so it's astounding to me that all three of them, and again, they've had their own challenges, but all three of them, you know, have made a huge imprint on the culture. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
But they don't live here anymore.
Yeah.
And I just, and people could talk about like the negative impact that they've made.
Mhm.
Uh, but like, what is it going to take for us to see the artistry, the creativity,
Mhm.
the capability in our young people? And because again, that's another example. Like we can talk about going to college and then going on to blow up somebody else's economy.
Right.
But that's just another example of, young people that have come up in this community, or at least we're here for a period of time.
Mhm.
And then our community has not been able to reap benefits from it.
Yep. So to the first point about CAP. So for about 20 years around workforce development and economic development, there's been the conversation as it relates to certain industries when they saw that their workforce was aging out.
Uh-huh.
There certain people were no longer interested in that industry, and they saw a certain population that, okay, let's see how we can motivate and tap that population and push them into this pipeline. Just being transparent.
Yeah.
I was running workforce during the time, and that same conversation and all of those systems were trying to be put in place to force that pipeline because the Baton Rouge and just Louisiana, is on that petrochemistry industry, and they need the workforce to be able to keep that infrastructure in place, because a lot of the spin-off sub companies and things of that nature, families and businesses thrive on that industry. So they want to be able to make sure it's propped up as much as possible. So that's oftentimes where it's the diversion from college and a push more to trade conversation. Has been and still continues to be to this day. When you hear workforce development, most times it's about trying to figure out how to fill that pipeline. Then to the second part, if you're oftentimes training kids to work a job, then you automatically cap their ability to grow beyond to where you want them to grow. And the elephant in the room at the end of the day is all of the individuals that you mentioned were African American males, just African Americans.
That's ironic. That is so ironic.
So it is what it is. And oftentimes, and of course, it'll be the violence, the drugs, and all of that comes from that genre of music.
Yeah.
Understood. Yes, agreed. But if we just peel away from that and we talk about the business and the economy of all of that and the things that it's able to produce, the people who have to do graphics, the people who have to do whatever ancillary businesses that are associated with that industry, just like the ancillary things that are associated with the petrochemical industry. Not only take that, but as we're moving in technology, and we have a lot of small businesses alone that's just in Baton Rouge, but seem to can't break out and grow in a certain way. Then when you look at what type of contracting opportunities that exist to be able to, okay, if small businesses are growing, then now you create a pathway to be able to employ these young people as well. So it's a whole lot of
that's actually where I wanted to. You must knew that's where I wanted to go next. So you were talking about how in our coming together with James Gilmore and Anita Tillman, we went after this contract. They called it a fair share program. We know it as DPE program. And that was, again, just, because we talk about being a progressive city and things like that. I think the thing that was just astonishing to me was like that it was just so shocking for people.
Yeah.
When most of these cities, again, that are blowing up around the country already had programs in place and have been doing it for years.
Yeah.
And so, like, we went after that. Things didn't necessarily work out with that particular program. And then we had the opportunity to be engaged when the city, was proposing theirs, and I sat on this committee. But I think it's still the same thing, man. Like when those conversations and those meetings and the number of people that were fighting against it and kept coming up with so we kept hearing conversations about how set-asides were illegal, set-asides were illegal. But the people that were pushing that never once came to the table, to my recollection, never once came to the table and said, you know what, y'all right. This is an opportunity to grow the economy in Baton Rouge. So let's figure out a way we can come together and make this happen. And so that's, and to me, like, I feel like, for so long, because this goes back to your comment about Baton Rouge being a plantation. Like, there's been a line drawn in the sand, and you better not cross it.
Yeah.
And people might not want to look at it that way, but like that's the way it's been. There's been a line drawn in the sand, and you better not cross it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I just never understood why people didn't understand. Back to your point, we could just make it simple. Perfect example. So if there was a small business in North Baton Rouge, since that's where people like to assume we all live, that was doing auto repair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the city has police cars, fire trucks, our pseudo government agency, Breck, Cats,
Yeah.
all these vehicles.
Yeah.
And obviously they do quality work because they've been in business.
Yeah.
10% of that, of the city contracts, went to that establishment.
Yep.
That then allows them to grow,
Yep.
hire more people,
Yep.
and expand.
Yep. Yep.
And not just like, because that 10%, like I'm not gonna say that they're gonna live off of that,
Yep.
but it creates opportunities.
Yep.
And I just never understood why people didn't get that.
Yeah. And take that thought further. So you have that 10%, then you have workforce dollars, right? And then now you're able to help that business to be able to not only grow its workforce, but some of these untrained individuals, you have on-the-job training that you can help create training programs for. You have work experience dollars that you can help to plug them in to that system. Then now the individuals who you're saying, hey, let them get a trade. Okay. Now you have some opportunities that small businesses are also helping to plug in to that process. What I found, that time and during the time now is that there's just when it comes to that thought process about DBE programs, and I'm fully engaged in that even now, that sometimes it's fear of the unknown. It's like somebody wants to come and take from a company. It's like, okay, they don't have the capacity to
Yeah,
do
that's the term we always
that
hear.
always lack of capacity, but my pushback on that oftentimes is, well, when you first started your business, you didn't have capacity. You was a small growing business, and some, you may have stepped into a situation, but most small businesses had to start and grow. And so it's oftentimes a fear factor that's going on. And a lot of times it's also in the world of business, people want to protect as much of their pie as possible. But I'm a firm believer that if all boats can rise, then none will sink.
Just one more quick thing, because I don't want to keep. I want to come
Yeah.
across like we beating on the city.
Yeah.
But I was thinking just about this conversation when we had our office downtown. I won't name the individual, but had actually had a couple of meetings with some leaders in the city up there. But we had a conversation, a meeting with a leader
Yeah.
in the city about the summer employment program.
Mhm.
And this individual had access to the kids.
Yeah.
But I remember at the time, the city was having a hard time finding the kids.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy. Like, it was just crazy that there's these two government agencies providing a program that would help kids, and the other agency has the kids, and they clearly would not communicate.
Yeah.
Um, and I just like that. It's just crazy that the things that just seem to make sense
Mhm.
that people don't see sometimes.
Yeah, it's the silos, and I'm sure it exists in
Yeah.
all kind of, cities outside of Baton Rouge, but we oftentimes have our kingdoms that we create, and it's difficult for, personalities to get along, because oftentimes it's the personalities, not the systems, to be able to get along. And that's the other thing that I found is that oftentimes when the personalities, adults kind of get into their stuff and the kids suffer. And so it's just a matter of trying to figure out how do we work through all of that. And I continue to hold out hope. I've been in meetings where people are willing and wanting to work together to get some things done. But just being transparent, we have some good and we have some bad, and we have a long way to go to get to where we need to be.
All right, let's switch gears. So um so you've been in business consulting or whatnot for a number of years, and then just tell me how it happened, bro. You just found out you were sick.
So with all the stuff, just not going to the doctor, business, community, family, just all other kind of stuff. And really, my family, but really Jackie and Tina used to be on me all the time by going to the doctor. And I'd be like, I'm going, I'm going, I'm going. I'd never end up going. So 2 years prior to me being diagnosed with prostate cancer, I had to keep going to the emergency room. End up going 3 times. I was just kind of throwing up a lot, feeling real bad, stomach hurting, and really didn't know what was going on. And it so much so they thought it was bad acid.
Okay.
The third time I went, Tina said had them to check my blood sugar, and my blood sugar was 200 plus, and my A1C was 10.5. So that's real high. That's like almost double where it needs to be. So that forced me to start going to the doctor quarter. So I got all my numbers. I mean, all my numbers. Cholesterol was bad, high numbers, my blood pressure. I mean, all my numbers were just off the chart. I was overweight. Everything was just. So for 3 months, I mean, I ended up getting on metformin, blood pressure medicine, cholesterol, ice, and so I'm going through, and I just say, man, I'm not gonna be for the rest of my life. This just not gonna be my life. So I changed up my diet. I stopped eating carbs. Don't eat sugar. Don't eat white bread. Don't eat white rice.
I'm listening for something.
Yeah.
Certain thing, right?
Certain things.
You done with steaks?
I really don't eat steak.
Oh, man.
I get them. I get them probably twice a year now. But that was because once I realized I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, that led me to really kind of get at you.
Yeah.
And so that forced me to start going quarterly. And so I got all my numbers down. I actually was off the vast majority of my medication besides blood pressure medicine. I still got to take it, trying to get that one figured out. Tina said, because I don't stop. That's my problem. So I'm probably about a year into that. And then my PSA was elevated. It was 5, I think is what it was. But we didn't know if that was elevated for me or not because I had never had it checked. So I was referred to a urologist and have to go through all that process, and then end up having to get the biopsy. When they did the biopsy, that's when it was confirmed that I did have prostate cancer. I pause right there. It's important that we as men talk to each other, especially about family. 2 years prior to that, I walked through the process with my dad. He had prostate cancer. It wasn't until I was diagnosed that I learned that my grandfather, his dad, died from prostate cancer. Had I probably known some of that, I'd probably been on top of it a little bit, knowing me. But so fast forward, I went through the process. It was real successful. And the big part about making sure your diet, it is where it needs to be, your weight and all of that. Because one of my concerns was I vacillated between doing the having my prostate removed, going through chemo, because what happens when your prostate is removed.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, man, I don't know. I ain't trying to deal with that as a man right now. Hey, I ain't trying to have them problems. And so my wife and daughter forced me, as they say, they made me think it was my decision to have my prostate removed. And my doctor said because I was in such good health, he didn't have to cut into the nerve, so I didn't have much damage. He said it really kind of just fell off. So, the Lord just blessed me with that. But he said, had you been overweight, things of that nature, you would have had a lot of side effects. So, that was kind of my process.
Okay. And so from that, I'm sorry. So let me drive home on one of the points you made about, one of the points you made about men talking to each other about their health, particularly with within our family.
Yeah.
And so you know this, my dad, it's been a few years now, but he went through that whole process. And so he's kind of stayed on me and my brothers about making sure we get ourselves checked, annual physical at a minimum. But at this point, at this age, especially me, or actually all four of us at this point, is regular doctor visits now. So I think that's like really, really important for us to make sure that we're staying on top of our health, particularly when we have things that are hereditary, that we need to stay on top of it and get it knocked out. So I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yeah, and with that, man, it's amazing because prostate cancer is one of those things. If you catch it early, you have a great chance of surviving it. It's amazing the amount of conversations I have with family members who lost family members to prostate cancer, and the fear that's in it. Because I was at the Bayou Classic, the little business expo we do. So we had a booth set up there. I talked to 3 guys that stand out to me. One of them, one of them, he had a fear of getting getting checked because he just didn't want to know because he had so many family members who died from cancer. So I asked him, I said, so you would rather not know and just it to happen? He's like, yeah, because I think if I find out, I'll be in more fear and die from it. That was one situation. I'm like, brother, you need to get checked out. I'm stay on top of you, make sure you get that done. So he been dodging me. But the second one it was a relative of somebody who had went through the process, had been diagnosed because they had to have a biopsy, which is painful, but didn't go back. And because it had been so long since they hadn't been back, they wanted to do the biopsy again to make sure it had. And he was just like, well, I'd rather just not even go through that pain. It is what it is. That was that one. Had a young brother. He had to be about 35. He lost his dad at 36. And I saw him kind of trying to avoid me. And I just pulled him to the table and I started having a conversation. He's like, man, it wasn't nothing but God to have you. He said, because I was avoiding you. He said, I said, no, I saw you. He said, because my dad died at 36 with prostate cancer. Now I'm 35 and my family had been on me about going get checked, but I'm gonna make sure I go get that done. But it's amazing, man. So that's why I'm vocal about trying to push this out, having as many conversations with African American men as I can.
So talk to me about the foundation and the kind of work, I guess, like the kind of work you're doing and like what's the aspiration for it.
Yes, sir. So a lot to what we've talked about, right? About our community and making sure we, have a thriving community. But I truly believe that if we don't have healthy men, we can't have healthy community. So if the men are dying, then we can't have a lot of stuff we need. And most of that for me is because of my faith, because I believe the man is the head based on what the biblical structure is. So you have to have that covering for the family to be okay. So a lot of the foundation is founded on being able to make sure we raise awareness among, all men, but specifically African American men. One, about getting your health checked out and knowing it's okay to be selfish about you. Because oftentimes as men and men like us, we put everybody else in front of us. We put everything in front of us. And sometimes, I felt bad when I kind of put myself in front of things. And so to teach men, it's okay to be a little selfish about taking care of you, physically. The next thing is your mental health. Speaking on that, because as men, we feel that it's not okay to express our emotions. We got to keep it all bottled up. We weak when it comes to expressing our emotions. So making sure we take care of our mental health and things of that nature. And then lastly, making sure we got, our faith, our relationship with the Lord lined up in the way it needs to be. Because if we don't have that straight, then everything else is gonna go by the wayside. So really just kind of that's what the foundation is about.
I'm gonna share something, and I kind of feel bad because I wanted to share it with my dad. I just haven't had a chance to share it with him yet. But we were in church Sunday for Sunday school, and he was teaching, and it was kind of crazy because like I've been teaching the young people, but it was only one kid there, so we was kind of sitting off to the side waiting for some more kids to come. And what was the lesson about? Dang it. This look bad because I ain't remember the lesson. But whatever the lesson was, dang it, what was it about? Oh, it was John. John was, the foreteller for Jesus Christ. I don't even know how he got on this. But I think that the theme of the lesson was, how, it's 400 years since there was a word from heaven.
Yeah.
And what it's like to, just wait all this time for any different thing. That was kind of the general theme of the lesson. But at some point, he asked this question about, I forget how he phrased it, but the statement that came out is that sometimes he feels like he failed as a father. And of course, he the senior deacon, and everybody's like, "Oh no, you raise up." But I just like it kind of bothered me because I got to move because I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get in this conversation."
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, "Oh yeah, you failed." It was like because like he said something that I connected with, and so everybody kept trying to talk him down off that ledge. But I don't know if they got what he was saying. And so, so we was kind of talking about our kids a little bit, off the air before we got started. But like I said, I hadn't had a chance to talk to him about it, about where he was coming from, but I connected with him and I understood I felt like I understood what he was saying. Because sometimes as hard as you work as a father, and your kids we blessed. Like, and I'll say that, like between the two of us, like we blessed with our kids.
Absolutely.
But then there's always times where I'm like, man, if I could have done this different, or and just being a little complicated, or they might do something silly like, oh my God, what did I do? Did I did I miss something?
Did I miss something? Yeah, that's true.
And so sometimes I feel that on both sides.
Yep, I'm with you.
Like if it's something that they struggling with or whatever, like what could I have done better in that situation? And I feel like that's where he was coming from with it.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about men and their mental health, I don't think we have enough conversations about, because we'll bash fathers, shortcomings or whatnot, and it could, regardless of what the situation is with the kid's mother, like, we have a lot of that stuff that goes on in our community and our culture.
Yeah.
And even the dads that, we feel like are doing it all right, I feel like a lot of times they do feel like they have some shortcomings.
Absolutely.
And we don't have space to have those conversations.
Yeah. True.
And I think in particular, when we see that our kids are going through things, where sometimes, quite honestly, like we've tried and we've taught them lessons or whatever, but they may not necessarily get it. So then you always tend to question yourself about what could you have done better.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important for those conversations to kind of bubble to the forefront. Because reality, I think more men struggle with that than we'll actually acknowledge.
Absolutely.
Because mom's always going to talk about their babies and what they could have did differently or the struggles that they had. But I think to your point, I think a lot of time as men, we have internal struggles that we don't really talk about.
Yeah. And my thing always, I like to say, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay in that space. And as men, we always feel that we have to be, the ones, the toughest. Josiah made a little joke. Just tell you how it's embedded. Cause he just had his baby last Thursday.
Yeah, it was last
Thursday. And he holding the baby, playing with her, the baby, Remy. She cries. And he makes the statement, it's okay. You go ahead. Daddy want to cry sometimes too, but I Daddy can't do that. And I stopped him. I was like, nah, it's okay. Daddy can cry sometimes, but it's so embedded in us that we don't even realize that we feel that way because we gonna come off as female if we too emotional, but we gotta release in that way because oftentimes we find unhealthy ways to release, right? Alcohol, drugs, gambling, women.
I thought you were going to say sex, but you
Sex,
call them.
yeah, but it's yeah. So those are the unhealthy ways that we express. I got to get this off some kind of way. But if you find some healthy ways to kind of deal with life, deal with yourself, then be a whole lot better.
And I think it's key because again, like we don't want to continue to pass the cycle and these traits down to our young men as they come along. And, and so you talk about, those 4 releases if you want to call it, we could call them for releases
Yeah.
that we fall trapped to sometimes. Um, but I think also what happens is like sometimes we may not necessarily recognize how it impacts the people that love us,
Absolutely.
and that could be from our mates
Yeah.
to our kids to
Yeah.
even our parents or
Yeah.
friends and coworkers.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll acknowledge, there've been times like I've had to, kind of come to that realization.
Yeah. Same here.
And so we tend to carry us. It's different from different folks, but I know for me, a lot of times it's like you kind of get withdrawn or snappy or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so we got to figure out a way to kind of not repeat those cycles or pass those traits down.
Yeah. Especially when you hold it in. You don't express yourself a lot. Tina, shit comes, shit peace, shit. You all right? Yeah. And we'll see. I'm good. I'm all right. But nah, you got a lot going on inside and in your mind. And the least little thing somebody says is agitation. I already got a whole lot on my plate and you bother. Yeah.
Set them right. Set them right.
Yeah. No, you ain't all right. Yeah. That's why you snapping like you snapping. Yeah.
So I hope I'm not leaking anything, but you're doing a web series?
Yeah. Yes, sir. So we're doing Martial Matters, which is a web series that's centered around the family. And actually what kind of inspired that is Jackie, Tina, and myself, we did a little sit down conversation that we had put on Facebook, and it just received the overwhelming response. Well, let me take one step back. Jackie, and even once I started the foundation, Jackie, like me, I've been behind the scenes so much. I just kind of put the foundation name out there, and I really didn't put my face to it, my voice to it. And they had been on me like, no, you got to get out there. You got to start saying something. People need to hear you. People need to see you. I'm like, no, I ain't feeling that. I'm really not feeling that. I done had a public face, and I don't want to be public face no more. I don't want to deal with people in that way. And I finally yield to it. And then when I yield to it, and we had that conversation that I was just talking about on camera, and the overwhelming response to it, I was like, okay, well, people really do need to hear this. And what started stirring about the family series is that I don't, let me say that, I don't see a lot of good, clean family entertainment on social media or just in this digital space. Most of what's attracted and what's shown is, to me, foolishness.
Yeah.
So I want to be able for us to put forward something that will put the image that we've kind of been talking about, a family that you could see how we interact, how we're doing some things. And also in the series, it'll show some of the business stuff I have going on and things of that nature. And what this is actually falling under, because I'm an entrepreneur, so I created Marshall House Studios. So with Marshall House Studios, it will hold the production of everything we do. We have a podcast that's going to come out. Won't release the name, but Jackie's going to do that. Then my son-in-law and my son Josiah, they're gonna do a little sports show.
Okay.
And Josh kind of works behind the scenes with the tech and all of that. And then I'll release this here. Probably look like March 28th. So I'm working on a book that we're gonna be able to put out as well. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm excited. I'm excited about this.
So I'm gonna throw you for a loop real quick.
Okay.
So you were saying earlier that Tina, I don't know if Tina told you this, but I guess maybe the realization, maybe I don't know if you said she told her this, but I know you mentioned now you doing too much.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're doing too much, right?
Yeah. But here's what you're right. But here's what I've learned to do.
I mean, it sounds like, I'm not saying you are. It sounds like.
Yeah. I've learned to be able to engage partners who can carry the load. And this is the first time that my family is actually involved in business.
Okay.
So usually I would just kind of get some stuff done. And so they've never. A lot of times, people would ask my family, "What your daddy do or what your husband do?" I don't know. He just always involved in something. I don't know. But like for the foundation, we're all board
Yeah.
members for the foundation, so they all play a part in that. With the web series, everybody has their part in that, so everybody's carrying the load. And I've learned to kind of give it. So one thing prostate cancer did do for me is open my eyes in that way. It's like, okay, if you're out of here, then what?
Yeah.
So you have to pull them in and engage them in the process. So, and a lot of this is being able to go ahead and set up legacy for them. And that's why I have, for instance, like I'm doing a podcast. Jackie's gonna do the podcast, doing the sports show, Corey and Joe. So I'm gonna set up certain things so everybody can kind of have something to deal with.
All right. So let's talk a little bit more about that. And I think that's something that like we've always talked about. I remember when it was just me and you would say, but I want to say it wasn't immediately because I think this happened over the summer. One of the things that we did was it was Irene and Jackie,
Yeah,
and then one of your nieces was working
yeah, yeah.
in the office.
Denasia, yeah.
And then it had to have been that same summer, we were able to get access to the Lincoln 2 in Old South Baton
Yeah.
Rouge.
Oh man, bro,
And then we had not the Ebony that worked for us, but Miss Pat's daughter,
Miss
Ebony,
Pat's daughter's Ebony. Yeah,
because she was one of the first people that came in and she was
Yeah.
doing dance classes. So all the kids, because even Miles and
Yeah.
your boys was involved in that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, one of the things that we've always tried to do is help somebody else.
Help somebody else. Yes.
And it's not like we was out there rocking and rolling with money,
Nah.
but I think that's one of the reasons why God was always blessing us
Yeah.
and sustaining us, because everything that we did, we always tried to pull somebody along with us,
Yeah.
whether it was our kids,
Yeah.
relatives.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about this earlier, even when we talking about like youth employment space, we were like, we always had interns. Again, it
Yeah.
wasn't just our kids. We always had
Yeah.
some type of interns. Sometimes it might just be a little stipend, sometimes it's non-paid. And so I think about them interns a lot. What's his name? Mitchell.
Yeah. Lawyer.
Mitchell's a lawyer.
Yeah.
Brother Phillip is out there doing it big in DC.
Yeah. Marcus.
Yeah, Marcus Johnson.
Johnson.
And then when we first started, and I had them 3 interns with EFOD. I think CJ is a coach somewhere from Shreveport.
Yeah.
I see Shayla on Facebook all the time. And then Brittany, I think she's a professor at Southern.
Yeah.
And
Truck
so,
driver. He was driving FedEx for a little bit.
yeah, because he was at your church, wasn't he?
Yep, he was at the church.
Yeah, so I every now and then try to check out his mom, because his mom texts me every now and then to check on him. But my point in that is that I think that's why God has sustained us and blessed us, because everything that we've done, and even though we don't necessarily work directly together, but I think like in our nature, we continue to always try to pull somebody along with us, look out for somebody. And so, and I think for me, and I would guess it's the same thing. For me, I think there's 2 reasons why that's important. One, because again, even though my parents weren't in business, I always saw them doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like they were always engaged in the community, always engaged in our church, always like we, Marcus and I talked about this when he came on. Like we always had people living with us, young people living with us, cousins or whatnot, but always trying to make sure everybody was straight. And then I would say the other reason is from a business standpoint, because that's literally what I wish somebody would have done for me when I was coming up.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if you think about certain people in leadership, like the old heads, they always had somebody that was mentoring.
Always had.
And the person I'm thinking about specifically is Mr. Delpit.
Yeah.
So
crossed my mind too.
So for the period of time, my office and the chamber's office, he was letting us use space at a very discounted rate, but it also gave us a chance to kind of get close to him and walk around the corner of his office. And some people in our age group that had an attachment to the man. And I think that's one of the things that we got to make sure as business leaders and community leaders that we really, really drive home, is the importance of mentorship, and I don't want to just say networking, but like true mentorship,
Mentorship. Yeah.
where we're imparting into young people, so that they can make that next step, and then imparting into them the importance of carrying that legacy on.
Yeah. And a part of that to me, for me, is because when I was, doing what I was doing in the streets, I felt I contributed to destroying the
Yeah,
community. Influenced some young people to go in the wrong route because, young people would see me, and if I saw, I would, okay, if you're gonna do it, okay, all right, go ahead, if you're gonna do that. Well, hey, when I was in that mindset, so because of that, I go an extra mile to try to make sure to kind of correct some of that behavior to make sure I pour into young people, and especially I'm drawn to young people who seem to everybody's
yeah,
written off, and even not young people, just adults who may have been attacked, and people seem to have written off. I'm drawn to them as well, just because I've been through what I've been through in that regard. And so, yeah, and I didn't think about that until you actually point that out, the seeds that you continue to sow into other people's lives, and how important that is to see that come around. Man, I had a young man, um, maybe a year or two ago, who I'd helped when I was with the city, who was at a fundraiser for somebody who was helping run for elected, and he just came up to me and thanked me. He's like, "Mr. Marsh?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, I just want to thank you." I was like, "Okay, well, what's going on?" He said, "Well, I had a painting company," and he said, "You helped to kind of set me on the way and provide me with some advice, and now I have a top civil engineering firm here in Baton Rouge." And so it's just them kind of things
yeah,
that you forget about, but your heart is in a certain place where you're not really doing it for the recognition. You're just doing it because you're in a place to help people. So that's it.
yeah. And so, so I was thinking about that earlier, and I think that like that's been kind of a common thread of fabric
Yeah.
between us, and it's crazy because we sit and have conversations, and we ain't doing stuff for free. I mean, we got to pay
Yeah.
bills right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Her name was Miss Wanda. When Miss Wanda asked for that check, we got to give Miss Wanda that
He's
check.
right. Exactly.
But again, like, it was like God just like always, he's always sustained us, take care of us. Um, and just before we wrap up, there's a couple other quick things I want to touch on before we wrap up. So, and this might surprise you, right? But when you told me, I don't think I knew that your mom died from suicide.
Really?
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
I mean, you always put a picture out there on her birthday and her
Yeah.
anniversary, death
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Um, and your sister always put stuff out there, but I don't think
Yeah.
I ever knew that.
Yeah.
And so, how do you think? I mean, obviously, like I knew that she died at an
Right.
early
You
age,
just didn't know the cause.
but how do you think that impacted?
Man, I think it one at that point, I feel I didn't really have a childhood,
Okay,
because the last conversation I remember having with my mom was that always take care of your sister, who was 3 years younger than me. So at that point, my mind transitioned to always looking out for her.
yeah,
So I grew up real fast. I grew up real fast. So I didn't have a childhood. Like a lot of people start talking about childhood memories. I don't know if I have a mental block because of what happened, but I really can't dig into that vault to talk about childhood memories. Then one of the other things is emotionally, I stopped feeling, because feelings to me started being associated with being hurt. So my defense mechanism was not to feel, and I think a lot too. That's where my kind of I tell people all the time, I've gotten a lot better, but you know this about me. I turn off like that light. Yeah, I'm quiet, but you push that button, you see another beast. so, and so I think a lot of that came from that, because that was my defense mechanism. So I think it stunted me emotionally a lot, but on the positive side, it made me real kind of focused and driven to where I can get through anything. It don't
yeah.
matter what come at me in life, I can push through it. So I think those are some of the ways that it impact.
And so, I think over the times, well, because I was thinking, wait, hold on, I'm gonna share this real quick. So remember that time we were on the board. I think I had just joined, but we hadn't started working together. We was on the board of Rise Up, and they were meeting them apartments on Greenwood Street.
Yeah.
And we walked out of the meeting. And I was like, dude, I didn't know you was a pastor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that you was like living this wild life or nothing.
Yeah.
And you said that, and I still remember what you said. You said a lot of people don't know that, and I'll go out telling people that. I just want to see how they respond when they find out.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me why you said that.
Here's why I say that, because oftentimes when people say, when you lead with I'm a pastor, then people going to pretend in front of you. They're not going to be who they truly are. I found, because I used to do it. I'm pastor, and then people would switch up. I'm like, I'm still Isaiah. I'm still Isaiah. I want you to be who you are with me, because one thing I don't like is people pretending. That'll set us off real rocky. And so I wouldn't leave with that a lot of times, because I want you to be who you are. Because think about it, if you say I'm Deacon Eric, the conversation changes. Holier than thou, bless the Lord. And that's not in your vernacular. That's not in your everyday conversation. That is not how you talk. So let me see who you truly are. But now it's just out. Everybody know. Most people know. But that's why I used to do that then, because I just wanted people to be who they were. And let's deal from there. And then eventually if you pay attention to me, there's something different about me when you're dealing with me. But I don't want you to pretend.
And so I want you to kind of expound on this for me. I won't have to go like in the details, but over the time I've known you, I know that like there's been some battles that you've had, some challenges you've had. Some have been public, some have been private. And so I get not wanting to be a public face. But I feel like, in every one of them situations, you overcome them, dealt with them, and overcome them. But what do you think your strength comes from?
Man,
and let me say this. And so, because I sit and I watch some of the stuff that's going on in our city now.
Yeah.
And over the years in general, but I've seen people crumble under some of that same heat. And so that's where, because I think this could be a source of encouragement to people that might be going through something at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And every one of those instances, any battle I've been through, every time I heard God tell me this, I got you. Don't worry about anything else. I got you. And I always then would kind of withdraw a little bit.
Yeah.
And me withdrawing is really me spending more time with him and getting my relationship in from him. What's the strategy, how to move forward, because he's never failed me. He's never let me down. It's like, there's a song that says, I've been in the water, but I didn't drown. I've been through the fire, but I didn't burn. So that is, I'm a living testimony of that. And so my foundation of my relationship with my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is what's kept me solid. Because if it wouldn't, this is Tina famous saying about me. She says, people don't know what God has saved them from because he saved you.
So let me pause right there. Because now that give me a chance to bring out something else I wanted to say. So you used to have this, I don't know if you still do it. And I ain't trying to pick on Mitch. But this is one of the times I can remember it coming out of you. So my boy Mitch he kind of had some street in him too now. And so we was in there having a conversation with him, and I don't know if he just wasn't, like, it wasn't clicking or he just wasn't vibing. But you had this thing where you'd be like, say, bro. That's what I knew, and other people that work with us knew. You better leave that dude alone.
Yes, sir.
So I get what Tina said.
Yeah. So what's that, man? And just him and a lot of that is because I think he allowed me to go through some things since he had to get some stuff out of me.
Yeah.
He had to humble me. He had to allow me to be, to get to a certain place where he can use me in the time such as this right now. I truly believe that.
All right. All right. So look, so to wrap up is two questions I always ask at the conclusion. And so the theme of the podcast is our children need roots and wings. And so when we're talking about roots, it's a foundation that, you as an individual or an organization is trying to provide our young people so they can stay grounded. And then the wings relates to what our aspirations are for them. So with that foundation, they can soar and they can be, whatever they desire to be.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about whether it's with your foundation or you as an individual, like what are the roots that you are looking to provide to young people in our community?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I just had a fresh conversation on yesterday. So one of the things we really didn't get into, and I'll answer it in this question, with the MLB Consulting Group, we do some AI stuff, and Tina is now doing some with our grandkids and two other kids. She's doing some early ed
Okay.
with them, which that's a full time thing. That's what she's doing now. Lord has just blessed us to be able to be a blessing to others. And with that, I was just having a conversation with her and actually Amber, Amber, about, how great would it be for us to create something for these young minds around AI, even if it's a mobile little station that they could begin to understand, STEM at this young age that they can begin to take with them. And we model it there, then we can kind of scale it to other places. So from a root standpoint, that's one of the things that I'm looking to do. And then also just from the Marshall House Studios, what I see with that as well is different because, content is
Yeah.
king right now, and creating those different avenues to train young people in different areas of content creation, behind the scenes, in front of cameras, things of that nature to give them the opportunity. Now, when we talk about aspirations, I go back to scripture again, it says, the Lord says, he knew us before we was
Yeah.
born in the womb. So it's always trying to figure out why, what's the gift that God has put in that child to give to the world, because they're the only one can give it to the world. And being able to uncover that and provide them with the environment and exposure for them to be able to flourish and grow in that.
Okay. And then the last thing, if you could look in that camera right there, on that right there, I'm gonna see if you can give a message to your grandkids in that camera right there.
Oh man, you about to break it down. You about to break it down. So first of all, G love y'all with all of his heart, all of his heart. And scripture says that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So y'all my grandbabies. And the foundation that G is building right now is for a foundation for y'all to be to build upon, for y'all to be covered, for y'all to be protected, for y'all to have a great relationship with the Lord, where y'all be able to train your children's children. And this is all for you guys. And I love y'all with all my heart. Oh man.
That was good.